Hi there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Joesephyr here for Final Fantasy TCG, and today I'm going to be bringing you an exclusive spoiler card for Final Fantasy TCG's Opus 9. I can't believe we're up to Opus 9 already. It's like, what, nearly 3 years? So we're up to nearly 10 sets now, and that means that there's been 10 sets of cards where I've been making YouTube videos, and that's scary in and of itself. But anyways, I wanted to bring this card to you guys as a little bit of an early look at something that I think is actually going to be really interesting. It's quite a simple card, but I think that its usability is going to be really high in the coming months for Final Fantasy TCG. So I'm going to do away with everything now, and I'm going to show this card to you right now. Its name is Mind Flayer, and it's a summon for Ice. There is a 2CP EX burst summon that says dull one forward on the board and draw a card. Now, before we go into all the different uses this card could have or anything, I'd like to invite you guys to check out all the social media links in the description box below, including my Patreon, my Twitch, my Discord, where we all talk about Final Fantasy TCG and all sorts of other things. And I did kind of want to gauge some interest on something that I wondered I would throw by you guys, in that I've actually been looking at designing a few bits for merchandising that I can do for myself with my branding and everything like that, and I've actually been looking at doing a playmat. So I'll leave a picture up quickly of the design that I've made so far. Let me know in the comments below if it's something that you would be interested in or something that you would like for yourself, because I wanted to design something that was it was just aesthetically pleasing, because I don't want people to buy something because it has my name on it. I want people to buy something because they think it's good. So I'm going to quickly touch on that and then let you guys have a look at that. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and let's get back to Mind Flayer. So looking at Mind Flayer, I think the first thing we have to notice is that it's the first card in Ice, or certainly the first summon, and certainly the first EX burst in Ice, that draws a card. We've seen through many cards that drawing a card on the end of something, such as Belias or even Fairy, who is the direct opposite of this card, can be very powerful. And honestly, I think this card is arguably the best of the bunch of those kinds of cards. Dulling a forward sounds like the simplest thing on the planet, but it has so many connotations. You can use this during either player's turn, so if somebody's going to attack you, you can dull it. If it's in your turn, you can stop a guy from blocking. If it goes over as an EX burst, it stops another guy from attacking, but even if it doesn't, it still draws you a card. There's so much utility for a card like this in a 2CP summon, because summons in Ice have largely been non-EX burst related, because all EX burst summons have been quite lackluster. This one, I think, kind of wrenches royalty from this. Glacialabalus is a modal summon that allows you to dull something and have your opponent discard a card. And obviously that card is generally stronger, but even with limited options on what you can do, so dull a guy, draw a card, those are the two things you're going to be doing. You're still doing two things for 2CP, and you're drawing a card in a colour that is largely revolved around discarding cards from your opponent. So you're refilling your hand, you're advancing the game state, let alone if you have something like a Genesis or a Lockdown, so that you can then attack, have them discard a card anyway. I honestly think that this card could be genuinely terrifying in tournament play. While there aren't that many EX Burst summons in Ice, there are actually a lot of EX Bursts in general in Ice, or there's certainly starting to be. You know, we've had Jill Nabat since Opus 1, we've had Kuja come out, who was a very powerful dull and freeze on entry EX Burst, who kind of fits this theme well. You have Cocytus, who freezes things on after you've used it, and dulls and freezes things as an EX. It's getting to a point now where Ice is very much becoming a hard control deck, where if you start hitting them, you're going to end up losing your resources just by being hit. So things like Scale Toad, who weren't all that great to begin with, you might be able to slow your opponent down to a point where that card is actually usable. And as I said, there are loads of characters in Ice, like Genesis or Locke or Sellers, that need to attack in order to get their full effect. So having Mind Flayer as a backup plan to do that can actually be absolutely astronomical in terms of card value for Ice. Now, we can't talk about a card like this without talking about Fusoya, because Fusoya is a card that obviously gets mentioned a lot when it comes to EX Burst summons, and honestly Fusoya hasn't been seeing a lot of play over the Opus 8 meta. But with a card like this, there's a lot to be said for dull your biggest guy, kill your smallest guy, and I draw a card. there's a lot to come from Fusoya that has potential in Ice. Now, usually when you're playing a card like that, you want to be playing it in Ice Water so that you can, you know, get rid of extra copies of it. But in Ice, both players tend to be discarding cards quite a lot anyway, so you could make an argument for even an Ice Lightning deck where you're discarding cards from both players' hands through various different means, and you could discard Fusoyas that way. But Ice Water is probably the best home for it. I'm just saying that Mind Flayer might have a home in a Fusoya-based deck based on the literal amount of value you get by hitting a Fusoya or hitting a Mind Flayer off of a Fusoya play. Orphan is another card that I think will benefit greatly from this, purely because when Orphan comes in, it dulls and freezes 2 guys, if provided you're playing a mono ice deck, or you have a lot of ice characters out. But when he attacks, he only keeps one thing frozen the entire time. But that being said, if you've got access to Mind Flayer, then you can make it so that whatever's new that comes onto the board that could threaten Orphan can now be a target for him without you actually having to lose much, if any, card advantage at all. Because you could just dull 2 backups, play the Mind Flayer, dull it, redraw the card, and then you're going off again. And like I said, I think that the simplicity of Mind Flayer is the reason it's quite as good as it is. It doesn't do a massive explosion on the board, it doesn't have these huge combo capabilities, but the simplicity of a card like this can be absolutely backbreaking in the right deck. I drew comparisons earlier between this card and Fairy from Opus 1. Now, obviously we're 9 sets into the game now. It's not surprising that a card that comes out now would be considered stronger than a card from Opus 1. But I want to raise the point that this card is strictly better than Fairy, in my eyes. There are reasons to use Fairy, like when your opponent attacks you, you activate your guy, you block it, but that is setting up a combo play that requires more external things. The point of Mind Flayer is that it can be used defensively, offensively, and it's a great EX burst. There is never a time where you don't want to see this card at some point. You know, your opponent has guys and you don't, you're behind. Dull their guy and draw a card. That is literally giving you a card towards your game, or your game plan, while still warding your opponent off from hitting you. You're about to win the game. Dull their biggest guy. You're getting attacked and you can't deal with this as well. If you've got a buttload of EX bursts, including this one, you're not as mad about getting hit in the early game. Because, as I said, Ice is becoming a very, very heavy control colour. You need to be able to take those early hits in order to be able to establish a board presence. And now that we have cards like Garland, Mind Flayer, Cocytus, there's so many good cards that are slowing your opponent down that I think Ice is a huge threat now. I mean, it always was one, but considering the Dadaluma's on his way out, and Dadaluma was Ice's worst nightmare, realistically, Ice might be a dominating threat once again. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you ever so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Mind Flayer, what sort of decks that you want to be playing in, and what sort of decks that you've seen, or other cards that you've seen from the Opus 9 spoilers so far. We've had Ifrita come up fairly recently. Gorgeous artwork. In fact, I may have to make a video just based on the artwork that has been coming out of these recent sets and some of my favourite pieces in the game. But let me know in the comments below what you think of Mind Flayer and all the other cards you've seen in Opus 9. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Final Fantasy TCG news, Final Fantasy Opera Omnia news, and all sorts of other stuff. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so that you'll know when a new video is coming out. Thanks ever so much for watching again, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Take care.